Welcome to the Alpha Warrior Show. We're excited to share diverse perspectives and expert insights with you. Please note that the views and information expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Alpha Warrior Show, its management, or our partners. Each of our affiliates and sponsors and partnerships is a separate entity, and their opinions are their own. Today's content is provided for information and educational purposes and should not be taken as specific advice, whether it be financial, medical, or legal. While we strive to present accurate and useful information, we cannot guarantee its completeness or relevance to your specific situation. We provide all information as is and encourage you to consult with a professional advisor to address your specific individual needs. Your use of any information from this broadcast is entirely at your own risk. By listening further, you agree to identify and protect the Alpha Warrior Show and its associates from any claims or damages arising from your use of this broadcast content. Changes to this disclaimer may be made at any time and will be done effectively immediately upon posting or broadcasting. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you find the episode both informative and thought-provoking. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
How's it going, everybody? This is the Alpha Warrior Show. I'm your host, Alpha. Gonna be a fun night. We're live. I got the Colonel with me. She's back in the studio taking a listen, and we're gonna be talking about Turkey, Afghanistan, drug trafficking, all the goodies. Another series of Operation Gladio, Part 16. I know you guys are loving it. The numbers are off the chart, but before we get there, Alpha's got to keep the lights on. So let me go to two quick partners and sponsors, you guys. First on deck, Alpha likes gold.com. Be prepared. It's easy. It's fast. Rich are buying gold. My partners at Goldco, you guys, the digital dollar. We talk about it all the time. Social media, phone calls, texts, emails. Everybody wants to know what's the insider information. Alpha, contact these people. They are way more better versed than I am. But digital dollar, listen up. Right now, it looks like the government's pushing for a digital dollar, which could mean every penny you could spend can be tracked and controlled by this very, very trustful government. If that's true, then your entire life could depend on the people you don't like, you don't know, and you definitely don't trust. That's why smart Americans are opting out, putting some of their savings into real gold and real silver, so to help you can go to alphalikesgold.com to get a free 2024 gold IRA kit from my partners at Goldco. It shows you how to protect your hard-earned money with physical gold and silver, even if it's still in a retirement account. And as an American citizen, you could score up to $10,000 worth in free silver just for safeguarding your savings. At the very least, arm yourself with the knowledge about your options here. Don't be a sheeple. Go to alphalikesgold.com right now, get your free 2024 gold IRA kit, and then one more commercial. We're commercial free to the end. And at the end, I'm bringing up a new partnership that a lot of you guys are aware of, but some of you haven't. So at the very end, something very cool. So make sure at the end of the show, you don't just bounce out, stick around. But before then, America's favorite mustache, and we're back in 60 seconds.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale. And here's a few examples. Buy one of our MyPillow 2.0s, you get another MyPillow 2.0 absolutely free. Made with cooling technology, the best pillow ever just got even better. And this just in, 9 brand new colors and styles of our Percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or more. That's as low as $24.98. And for the first time this year, I'm bringing you our My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get your MyPillow 2.0s. Buy one, get one free. Percale sheets as low as $24.98. My Slippers and Sandals as low as $25 a pair. And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free.
Absolutely free. alphalikesgold.com, my pillow, my store, promo code alpha. Let me bring the real star you guys are here to hear from tonight. Colonel Towner, how are you doing, ma'am?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I am good considering. And you know what? I'm going to put it out at the front end because I have a very loyal audience who pays attention to everything. Colonel, they pay attention so much. This is funny, actually. One time somebody reached out to a mutual friend of ours that they knew was close to me and said, hey, does Alpha have like a tick or something like in his right shoulder? Because from time to time I always see his shoulder, going up. And I said, no, this is the one that controls the mouse and does all these things. But they saw that this shoulder moved more than the other one. So since they're so good with their eyes, tomorrow I got court, you guys, June 6th, D-Day. Very important day for not just me. There's a lot of people, friends that have very important days. It's kind of interesting that they all line up tomorrow. So if I seem a little distracted, that's probably what it is. But I'm a Marine. I got my game face. I think we're just going to have a lot of fun tonight. But if there's something different, that's what it is. So don't think too far into it. So with that, you guys definitely keep me in your prayers. Colonel, Turkey, Afghanistan, drug trafficking.
So just to make sure that I had your attention tonight, this is the reason why I picked this topic, because I know you've been in Afghanistan and I know you dealt with narcotics as a cop. So this is my Alpha Warrior show for you. So
let's do this.
We start off with the fact that in the 70s, when we lost Vietnam, which we all know we were there for drug trafficking and not actually to save Vietnam or fight communism or any of that stuff. And we know that that area was oftentimes referred to as the Golden Triangle. Well, the scout was on to find an alternative source since we were going to lose control and the staging capability out of Vietnam. So the CIA looked around and focused on what they labeled the Golden Crescent, which happened to be the northern areas of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some portions of Turkey. And so that's kind of where their focus moved. And by the end of if you go back a little bit, by the end of the 1950s, there was very little opium being produced in Afghanistan because they had, as a country, made a conscious effort to isolate in the Helmand area a few thousand acres of very rural tribes was still dealing in it because it was a cash crop through Turkey. But as an overall country, they had moved away from that, and they had ventured off into grapes, actual vineyards, wheat, and cotton. And they were doing extremely well as a country, as crops. Had a fairly new government. Prior to that, there was a kingdom there, and they went through a couple of different coups. Nothing good until they landed on a guy by the name of N-U-R, Mohammed Taraki. And he basically was very kind of middle of the road. He did everything in his power to eradicate the little remaining poppy that was being grown and to focus on actual worthwhile crops. And he also did everything he could to get rid of the Islamic fundamentalists, who were the only ones left, by the way, still growing poppy. And he also focused on building schools, and he did away with basically being able to bribe families and buy your brides, and a whole lot of really good things. So obviously, when you do that, by 1975, the tensions between the government and the fundamentalists who still wanted the cash crop of opium had broken out into violence. In the Pashtun tribesmen mounted a revolt in the Panjshir Valley north of Kabul. And the tribesmen were led by, I don't know how you say his first name, Gulbandan Hekmarda. And he basically became, because he's now a royal pain in the side of the president, Taraki, he became the golden child for the CIA. So Hekmarda is going to be the guy that the CIA uses to overthrow the government in order to get them to expand their opium production. Nothing like corrupting a leader. So go ahead.
No, I was saying they never do anything like that.
Yeah, never. So ironically enough, Hekmarda makes his first debut in the public for the whole world to see by killing a student at the University of Kabul. And interestingly enough, 1972 is the same year that the bank BCCI gets set up in Pakistan. And that's not a coincidence, because keep in mind, when we were doing most of the drug trafficking out of the Golden Triangle, we used the bank like HSBC because it's nearby in Hong Kong, and we were using the Vatican Bank. But when we moved over to the Afghanistan area, and during the 70s, they decided to also set up a new bank that was going to be a lot closer to home. And so they picked Pakistan and they set up the BCCI. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. But after killing the student, he flees to Pakistan, where he becomes an agent of the Inter-Services Intelligence, which is ISI. And for anybody that knows their history about the US CIA funding of the Afghanistan war when they were fighting the Soviets, all of our money, not a penny was allowed to go directly into Afghanistan. Every single penny went through the ISI in Pakistan into Afghanistan. So this guy has been set up by the CIA in the ISI in order to be one of the conduits into Afghanistan, this Hekmarda guy. So it's very important to understand where he came from, how he ended up in Pakistan, and the conduit back into Afghanistan eventually with, what ends up being hundreds of millions of dollars. So the CIA believed that Hekmarda, despite the fact that he was clearly crazy because of some of the crap that he was doing, like he advocated for the fundamentalist in Afghanistan. He agitated them and encouraged them to throw acid in women's faces that weren't wearing the veil and didn't dress the way he thought they should be. He also advocated that the tribal leaders be kidnapped and assassinated if they didn't align with the fundamentalists. So he was clearly crazy. And of course, that would be the guy the CIA likes. So he was going to be the conduit for undermining the Taraki government so that they could gain control of the poppy fields. So throughout 1978, a year before the Soviet invasion, Hekmarda and his mujahideen were burning universities down, burning girls' schools down throughout Afghanistan, and gradually gaining more and more control of the arable farmland by doing this. And there was people that were in favor of the government because of the Taraki government, because of all of the improvements that he had made to life in Afghanistan. People absolutely loved him. And not everybody, but a lot of people. But one of his problems, as far as the CIA was concerned, as we've learned in so many of these countries, is because they're on so close to the Soviet Union that he was willing to talk to the Soviet Union and some of the former Soviet satellites in order to do business, because he's selling cotton and grapes and stuff like that. But, you know, the rule is you're not allowed to talk to him. So anyway, in the middle of all of this, kind of the false flag that happened in order to set the whole coup of Taraki in play was the ambassador. The U.S. ambassador to Kabul at the time was a guy by the name of Adolf Dubs, D-U-B-S. And they assassinate him on February 14th, Valentine's Day of 1979. And it's interesting to note, because most of the literature you read about this assassination says that the only people that benefited from his assassination was the Soviets, but that's absolutely the exact opposite of what's true. The Soviets had a pro-Soviet, or at least somebody that would talk to them, in the presidency at the time. The worst thing that could have happened to the current president, Taraki, was for that guy to die, because that's going to unleash a hellish force against his government, because it was on his watch that a U.S. ambassador was assassinated. So basically, he's kidnapped. He's taken to the Kabul hotel, and there's a lot of he said, she said after the fact. But the bottom line is the guy was murdered. There was no real investigation done. They immediately kill the 4 people that kidnapped him, because, of course, they don't want any witnesses to tell about what actually happened. So, again, there's just a lot of finger pointing. He's a very interesting guy if you look at his history as well. He was in a lot of the hot spots for Operation Gladio, and there's no doubt that he was there to instigate a coup. So in the summer of 1979, 6 months before the Soviet invasion, the U.S. State Department issued a memo that basically made it very clear that its stake was with the Mujahideen, which was basically going to be overthrowing the government. The U.S., this is a quote, the U.S. larger interest would be served by the demise of the Taraki regime. You know, it's not a presidency, even though he was elected. It's a regime, because he talks to the Soviets. Despite whatever setbacks this might mean for the future social and economic reform in Afghanistan, the overthrow of his party, the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan, would show the rest of the world, particularly the third world, that the Soviets' view of the socialist course of history as being inevitably as being inevitable is not accurate. So we're willing to kill tons of people and wreak havoc on a country just so we can poke the Soviet Union in the eye. That's literally what that translates to. And that's from the US State Department. And so, as many people, well, let's just keep going because I want to have a big foot stomp when we get to the actual Soviet invasion. In September 1979, a couple of months later, Taraki was killed in a coup organized by the instigated by the CIA using some Afghan military officers. Hafizullah Amin was installed as the country's new president. Amin, A-M-I-N, had impeccable Western credentials, you know, like a CIA puppet. He had graduated from the University of Wisconsin and Columbia University. He served as the president of the Afghan Student Association, and he was basically funded by an entity called the Asia Foundation, which is basically a CIA front. So this is a CIA paid stooge on standby, ready to take over as the president after the CIA couped Afghanistan. The US-backed regime at its border with the Soviets, the Soviet Union, invaded Afghanistan in December 1979. So keep in mind that that northern area up there is the kind of the poppy. And the bottom line, and that's why it's hilarious, the people that say that kidnapping of that ambassador could have in any way benefited the Soviet Union, because it absolutely did not. It 100% benefited the United States because they used it as the impetus to overthrow the government. And then within like September to December, now they've got a guy in there that's their paid stooge. He immediately starts instigating shit up in the northern part of Afghanistan with the Soviet Union. And then the Soviet Union basically was baited into invading with some very false information. And so the entire intent from the State Department's perspective was to create a false flag for the Soviet Union to invade Afghanistan and use that as their Vietnam. And what we all know to be true is you have to have military operations going on anywhere you're going to do massive amounts of poppy harvesting, because the drug trade requires inordinate amounts of shipping and aircraft trips. And the only way to adequately disguise that is by a military operation. So that was basically the impetus for this entire thing, was to get a war going so that we could hide the poppy movement within the movement of all the quote unquote war supplies. So in the war in Afghanistan delighted the State Department, including Brzezinski, because keep in mind, during this time, this is the Carter administration, and the Secretary of State is Brzezinski. So he basically had, and you've got to listen to this because this is just crazy shit. He had a vision of the way the world ought to be. And this is, he basically wanted control of quote unquote Eurasia, including Turkey, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. This is a quote: "For America, the chief geopolitical prize is Eurasia." And I still think that's true today. Now, a non-Eurasian power is preeminent in Eurasia, and America's global primacy is directly dependent on how long and how effectively its preponderance on the Eurasia continent is sustained. To put it in a terminology that harkens back to the more brutal age of ancient empires, the three great imperatives of imperial geostrategy are to prevent collusion and maintain security dependence upon the vassals to keep tributaries pliant and protected, and to keep the barbarians from coming together. That was his mission in Afghanistan. And that's what he thought about those people that lived there, that they were barbarians, and without somebody that's effectively as smart as he is controlling them, that there would be too much turmoil in that area. So he needs to be the ringleader. He goes on to talk about, there was a group called the Overworld. It was an elite group which basically created events in order to bring about the New World Order that Brzezinski was a part of. And they realized that the concept of democracy and freedom could never galvanize the scattered tribes and people of Central Asia. The people could only be unified by the cause of Allah, since they were overwhelmingly Islamic. So their idea was to start basically a holy war, or make it all about their Islamic religion, in order to galvanize them into action. And so this offered these people many benefits, because it could instigate the issue with the Soviet Union, because at the time they're communists, they're supposedly godless, and therefore you could use that in your favor. And what that got you was access to their vast natural gas, oil resources in Eurasia. And months before the Soviet invasion in 1979, the CIA launched an operation called Operation Cyclone, which was an attempt to destabilize the Soviet Union by spreading militant Islam throughout the Central Asian republics. This is going to make you puke. So basically what they did was, this operation would create hundreds of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Al-Jihad, Ulema, Union of Afghanistan, the Salafi group for proselytism and combat, the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, Taraq ul-Ansar, Jamaat Ulema al-Islam, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. One of those branches in Pakistan, one in Afghanistan, Lashkar-e-Taiba. It would give rise to the terror attacks that would maim and kill millions of people in the future all over the world, in order to create a dream of a new Islamic world order, which is exactly what it was espoused by that Fethullah Gulen, who lives in Pennsylvania and tried to orchestrate the coup in Turkey for Erdogan. So this is finite proof that the CIA created and funded the entire, what we know now to be Islamic terror groups, all in order to poke holes and distribute them across all of the former Soviet, while they were still Soviet satellites, in order to instigate terror events, all in an order to basically, quote unquote, defeat communism. Which, if you track some of these, obviously we know about Al-Qaeda, they then use these terror groups that they created in their funding to orchestrate terror events in other parts of the world, to include the United States.
It's textbook to what they've always done. You know, I'll create the virus, and then I'll have the software to get rid of your virus. You know, so to speak. What was that? What was it? Operation what was that one called?
Cyclone. Cyclone.
Okay, just want to make sure I grab it. By the way, people love when I grab the links that you talk about and I put them down there. So I love bringing it up.
Because so many people want to actually go and look some of this stuff up. And I highly encourage that when we do our noon Operation Gladio things in spaces, that, you know, Bridget and Liza do such a great job of putting all the links. Most of the stuff, if I'm doing it not out of my own show notes, but out of a book, they will go and get the book and put a lot of the footnotes in as the links. And that way people can verify everything we're saying, which is, to me, crucial to all of this, because I don't want anybody taking my word for it. I want everybody looking this shit up. So we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the BCCI because it's very important. In 1972, as I said earlier, the BCCI Bank, which is the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, was set up in Karachi. The guy that set it up is Aga Hassan Abedi. It's Abedi, who is, you know, he was like a world famous financier, and he had deep connections to this entire underworld apparatus, particularly in Pakistan and the ISI and the money laundering that the CIA did. So he also had reaches into Turkey and some of the oil barons in Abu Dhabi. So the Pakistan location created the perfect place to put a corrupt bank. And basically, thanks to the CIA, because it was a CIA front bank, they registered it in Luxembourg, even though it was in Pakistan. And then it grew to over 400 branches in 78 countries, including buying illegally, by the way, First American Bank in Washington, D.C. And what's significant about that is First American Bank back in these days, in the 70s, was the bank that all the congressmen banked at. And the reason why BCCI wanted it is because then they could spy on all the congressmen and what they did with their money. They also bought the National Bank of Georgia, which ended up getting one of the Carter administration people to have to resign because he was the current owner of the National Bank of Georgia and facilitated this illegal purchase of his shares of that bank to BCCI, and he got in trouble. He was Jimmy Carter's OMB director, and so basically he had to resign. They also bought an independent bank called the Independence Bank of Encino, California. So they had places everywhere to money launder. And obviously, by the time we get to the 70s, we are now focusing on LA as the drug hub for cocaine. And that's the reason why they wanted a local bank, because keep in mind, they deal in cash. So having a local bank that you can carry suitcases of cash to and no one can question you is very important. So virtually free from scrutiny, it engaged in not only money laundering proceeds from drug sales, but also arms trafficking on a very large scale, to include selling French fighter jets to Chile and Chinese silkworm missiles to Saudi Arabia. In 1985, it had become the 7th largest financial institution in the world. They handled all of the personal money for Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, which we know the CIA installed, Pandemanium strongman Noriega, which we know the CIA installed, and Palestinian terrorist Abu Nadal, and also Osama bin Laden. Also, Liberian President Samuel Doe, and all of the leading members of the Medellin cartel in Mexico. So let me explain to you the ones that we know specifically the CIA installed. We know they installed Noriega. We know they installed Hussein. We know that they set up bin Laden. We know that they created Al-Qaeda. And we know that most of the Medellin cartel was all set up by the CIA. So then you can figure out by default that this Liberian, and I've not looked into him, Samuel Doe, was most likely also installed, because the reason they're doing this is the way to be able to money launder money to the people that are your stooges is have them all bank at the same place. And then you don't even really have to money launder. You just have to deposit the money in it and scoot it over to them.
Leanne Leslie in the chat, she's watching from X, so shout out to the people watching on X right now. You guys are giving Rumble a run for their money. It's a big audience on X right now. But she puts the comment, Encino is getting a little too close. So she must be in Southern California with me, because I had that same thought, Leslie, when the Colonel brought up the Encino branch. I'm like, that's in my backyard. So I went and looked it up, and here, I'll bring it up on the screen. Hopefully their pop-up doesn't pop up again, but it says Encino Bank linked to BCCI cases closed. This is from 1992. And I'll just read this paragraph, right? These two paragraphs here, they're little ones. The plea agreement called for troubled Independents and First American bank shares in Washington, D.C. to share a large portion of the settlement money. Independence officials hoped the capital would enable them to attract a buyer who could salvage the bank, which had assets of about over $500 million, was closed by the California Banking Department at 4:15 p.m. when state regulators took control of its Ventura Boulevard headquarters and its 13 branches throughout Southern California. $500 million, Colonel?
Yeah, because they were money laundering drug sales out of LA.
Mike. And just so happens that there's a connection to Washington, D.C. banks.
Well, but see, that's because the BCCI, the parent bank, owned that DC bank, owned the Atlanta, Georgia bank, and owned the Encino Bank. There was a connection to all three of them. And when they folded in the 90s, when BCCI went out of business, see, this is a whole nother conversation about the banking aspect of this. What they did was they created these banks, and they would money launder for as long as they could. And then they take out all of their deposit money, and the bank fails, and they screw all of us. And they did this repeatedly. They did it in some of the savings and loans in the 80s, when the whole savings and loan thing. If you go back and you look at all the big savings and loans, they had a board of directors that allowed the savings and loans to make uncollateralized loans to these operators. And they would take, let's say, a haul of drug money, $50 million. They would put it on deposit. You can loan out $9 for every $1 you have on deposit. And they would loan those $9 out to their buddies, uncollateralized. It would be signed off by the board, who were also their buddies. And then they would just switch hats. The guys who got the money at the last savings and loan became the board directors at the next one. And then the board directors at the last one got to be the people that got the loans uncollateralized to them. And they just kept paying musical chairs from one bank to another bank to another bank. And they were basically fleecing us out of our money, because then the bank would fail.
It sounds just like a freaking Ponzi scheme.
Yes. And just before the bank would sell or fail, they would take their $50 million out. They wouldn't tell you it's going to fail, but they got their money out. They got all of the $9 out for every $1, which is just fake money. And then they got their money out, and you were screwed. That's the entire savings and loan failure. It was all manipulated. So BCCI is just another one. Nugent Han in Australia was another one that they did this with. Castle Bank in the Bahamas, they did this with. Every single one of them ended up failing for exactly the same reason. They use it until somebody gets wind of the fact that they're doing something not right. And then the first time someone tries to look into them, they basically just close down after they get their money out. So the CIA director, William Casey, made regular visits to the BCCI headquarters in Karachi, making the Pakistani city the new haven for covert operations. The bank served the CIA in many different ways. It allowed them to pay untraceable bribes. They also shipped in young women and did human trafficking there at the bank to service all of these people that came in to do business there. And they also funneled cash to pay assassins. The enormity of the bank's operation was evidenced by its transfer of $4 billion in covert aid to Iraq from 1985 to 1989 during the Iraq-Iran War. For the Iraq transfers, BCCI would use Atlanta branch Banca Nazionale di Lavillon, which was called BNL, which is an Italian bank that had ties to the Vatican Bank that they were all money laundering out of. Henry Kissinger sat on the BNL, the Italian bank's advisory board, along with Brent Scowcroft, who goes on to become President George H.W. Bush National Security Advisor. One happy little family, and they're all in on it. A guy by the name of John R. Bath, and you can look him up. It's B-A-T-H. He was also a CIA operative, and he became one of the BCCI directors. While serving as the Pakistani bank director, Bath was also co-owner of Abruzzo Energy, which was the Texas oil company that George W. Bush Jr. created. Isn't that cozy? Kamal Adam, a fellow BCCI official, served according to the Kerry Commission as, quote, a principal liaison for the CIA and the entire Middle East division from 1960s to the 1979, which is basically for 20 years. So you have the BCCI official as a CIA agent for the Middle East. Did you look up Bath?
I'm trying to find him.
John R. Bath.
Say it one more time.
John R. Bath, B-A-T-H. So I'll tell you a little bit about him. He got involved in, so there was a Saudi Arabia prince and financier who basically, you got him?
I have a James R. Bath that's connected to BCCI and CIA. Here, I'll bring him up. You tell me.
Texas?
He is James R. Bath. Yep, he's from Texas.
Okay, so
Texas businessman. He had interest in aircraft sales, real estate.
Yes, no.
Yeah. Okay, I'll bring that up on screen then.
Yeah. So the guy that had the money, when they needed the seed money to start BCCI, the Saudi Arabian guy that basically gave them the seed money also did a lot of business in Houston, Texas with James Baker, the Bushes, and all of them. Well, Bath is the guy that retrofitted all of their big luxury aircraft into, from like, you know, just a standard cargo aircraft into being these luxury airliners for the Saudi royal family. And then he branched out and started doing it for other people. But he primarily was a CIA go-between for a lot of the Middle East countries, between the Texas oil and the Saudi oil, or just basically the Arabian oil. So anyway, right before BCCI fails, they had a audit, and one of their annual audits that was done by Price Waterhouse. And, you know, according to Price Waterhouse, within months of their last audit that said they were extremely well financed, the bank failed. And the irony of this, now keep in mind, they're using BCCI to launder money. They're also using the Vatican. And the only reason they even opened BCCI is because they were hauling so much drugs. They couldn't do just the Vatican without it becoming completely obvious. So they opened BCCI as kind of like an outlet valve in order to be able to keep up. So within, like I said, months, they have had this Price Waterhouse claiming basically let's see, there was a class action lawsuit for Price Waterhouse saying that their negligence had cost people $11 billion. And the matter was eventually settled out of court. Ironically, in the wake of the settlement, the Vatican Bank turned to Price Waterhouse as well to certify their balance sheets. So if you know you've got a corrupt accounting firm, we're just going to go ahead and use it for all of them. So as part of what ended up being the Kerry Commission, and that is John Kerry, by the way, looking into the CIA's relationship with BCCI, it turned out that there was a relationship, obviously, between BCCI, the CIA, and members of many of the intelligence communities. And the CIA and BCCI relationship obviously created many mutual benefits. For many months, the CIA resisted in providing any material at all to the subcommittees, like we see them do them now. However, key players who might explain these relationships were mysteriously unavailable all of a sudden, some including former CIA Director William Casey and the BCCI customers and the Iranian arms dealers Ben Banerjee and Cyrus Hashemi ended up dead. Others, including most of the BCCI key insiders, remained incommunicado. Excuse me. And they hid them in Abu Dhabi so they couldn't be extradited. So to date, the Abu Dhabi government has refused to make any BCCI officers available for interview to anyone. And the former BCCI chairman, Aga Hassan Abedi, remains severely incapacitated due to a heart attack. I guess the heart attack gun must have misfired. It didn't kill him. Sorry. But so we're going to branch off now. We looked at Afghanistan. We're going to branch off now and see, because its neighbor in the upper area, Turkey, had a lot to do with this whole Golden Crescent arrangement between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Turkey. I see you got the map up there. And there's so the pivotal center of the heroin route from the Golden Crescent was relatively an easy task for the U.S. intelligence officials. By 1970, the CIA had infiltrated the Turkish Secret Service, and their initials is MIT. So I'm going to just use their initials because it's a long name that I don't know how to pronounce. The full extent to this infiltration was made known by a guy by the name of Sabahattin Sabasman, who was the vice director of MIT. He actually testified, quote, "The CIA has a group of at least 20 people who work together with the MIT and within the MIT at the very highest level," unquote. He also said the agency trained all MIT, meaning the CIA, trained all MIT personnel, provided all necessary equipment, including a torture chamber, and paid all the bills. This payment would have been substantial since the time the MIT employed several hundred to include probably thousands of people, both in the agents, consultants, and technicians. The CIA also continued to train and support all members of the counter-guerrilla, the organization. That's actually the name of the organization, counter-guerrillas. They were kind of like a sister organization to Grey Wolves. And you've heard me talk about Turkey's Grey Wolves. These both, the counter-guerrillas and the Grey Wolves, were part of their Gladio network. These recruits were trained at paramilitary centers established in Ankara, Bolu, Kasari, Buka, which is near Izmir, and in Cyprus. And they were trained by members of the U.S. Special Forces, including Green Beret. And they were trained by that training manual, FM 30-31, which forever everybody said didn't exist. But then we found annexes and the actual manual because it does exist. And that's the field manual that they use to teach people how to torture people. It also taught people how to launch terror attacks and to place blame on the communist, because that's what they're going to do. The Grey Wolves, and also they placed blame on a lot of the Kurds, the Turkey people did, but for everybody else, it was the communists. The Grey Wolves, as a militant arm of the Turkish movement, embraced the training wholeheartedly. They felt racially superior to everybody that was in the former Ottoman Empire. So it kind of fed right into their belief system. And also they were committed to the elimination of the Kurds. And therefore they use these techniques almost exclusively on the Kurds. By 1976, there were 1,700 Grey Wolf organizations within Turkey and about 200,000 registered members, well over 1 million sympathizers. And I have said this repeatedly. Not only did Turkey have the second largest NATO budget, second only to us, of all of Europe, but they also had the single largest Gladio program, bar none. And that's why, because they were using it all over that area, not just in Turkey. And keep in mind that the Turkey Gladio, and I think his name comes up here, is the guy that actually tried to assassinate John Paul II at the Vatican. He was a product of this entire network that we're talking about. And in order to manage or guard, whatever you want to call it, the poppy production, you have to have some large organization like this in order to be able to secure the areas and take out people who become problematic, because everything you're doing is black ops. The weapons you're using comes off the black ops market. The money you're using is black ops money. The whole drug trafficking obviously is black ops. So everything about what you're doing has to have immense security, weapons, and all of this stuff. And then you have to have all of these facilities like these, what do they call it? The black sites where they took people to torture them. That's basically what I just described. So that takes lots and lots of money. So
I think back to Iraq, Colonel. The whole war out there. And I remember when we'd go, they would task our unit to go snatch a dude out and then drop him off with the spooks. You always knew who the spooks were because they were a small element. They were the guys that wore, they had this beard, but, sometimes even bigger. They were older guys. These dudes were, well, older by means of what we were back then, but they'd be in their 50s and 60s, tan pants, stuff. And we'd escort them. And sure enough, we drive out to the middle of BFE. And we provide security while they went and did the things they needed to do. And it just makes me wonder, how many guys did we go and capture, hand over to them, and they weren't probably really bad guys, or they were bad guys.
Yeah, my guess would be 100%. Because most of the people that are taken to these black sites and tortured are not who they tell us that they are. They are people that have become a problem to their illegal operations. So, also, by 1975, the U.S. DEA, people that were in it, said that they were controlling a multi-billion-dollar drug operation through this whole network that the CIA had created. There are 3 guys that were the leading elements of Grey Wolves: Abuzer, Ugurlu, Bekhar, Salek, and Hussein Seal, C-I-L. So those are the guys that basically were kind of the hierarchy of Operation Gladio inside of Turkey. And they, Seal, C-I-L, he was actually, while he was Turkish, he spoke fluent Italian, and he was kind of the guy that was the go-between between Turkey and the Sicilian mafia in the networking of getting the drugs back to America, which is important for the overall scheme because these contacts gained him entry into Roberto Calvi. And for everybody who doesn't know, we're covering this actually in my afternoon class. Calvi was the head of the Banco Ambrosiano, which was a civilian bank, although it was affiliated with the Vatican. It wasn't on Vatican property. And this Seal guy also was connected to Archbishop Marcinkus of the Vatican Bank. And Marcinkus used to be the Archbishop for Chicago, where he also banked with the mob there. So at the close of 1975, Ugurlu, Serlink, and Seal sent a guy by the name of Sammy DeRose to Sicily, and he was supposed to basically make out a drug deal between the Sicilian mafia and getting the opium from the Golden Crescent area down to the supply, the conversion, the pharmaceutical things where they make it into the powder. But he wasn't able to make a deal with the Sicilians. And when he got back to Turkey, they beat him to death in the hotel room with clubs.
Jeez.
So,
and I want to say my thank you, call sign Cujo. He says, Alpha, is your computer mic on? Yes, I did a reset today. So thank you, Cujo, because I didn't know that. Because I'm hearing through the soundboard. So I went and checked and said it's actually the camera mic was picking me up. So thank you, call sign Cujo, for allowing me to fix that. So shout out to you, brother.
Call sign Cujo likes to come into a lot of the Rumble things that I do. He's a great guy. So also Bulgaria. For those who you don't know, when I started researching Operation Gladio, Bulgaria is like a major weapons black market hub. And so they come into play with a lot of Operation Gladio. There was in 1977 meetings between the arms dealers in Bulgaria and the Turks, these same people, the Seal brothers, Ugurlu, Serlink, and an Italian by the name of Raphael Cutolo, Cutolo, who happened to be one of the capos in Komaro. There's also the guy Mikhail Zaza, Z-A-Z-A, who was the head of the Sicilian crime family. And some other Italians, basically, you know, kind of like a powwow for them all to meet up. And all of the Italians were members of the P2 Masonic Lodge, which we find often in all of our Operation Gladios in Italy. And so they set up a new drug network coming out of the area. Now, I do want to bring, if anybody wants to do extra research into this, there is a company that was owned by the Bulgarian government called Kintex, Kintex. The only way you can find that is if you search on Kintex and the word Bulgaria together, because like with everything else, when they have something like this, they'll create later on something with that same name. So then when you search, you can't find Kintex unless you actually add Bulgaria with it. They like hiding themselves. So Kintex was actually formed in 1968, and it was directly connected to the Bulgarian Security Service, which kind of was like their Gladio people. Its primary function was trafficking illegal arms for right-wing Turkish groups, including the Grey Wolves. They also trafficked weapons to the PLO in Lebanon and to the government of Israel. This is in 1968. With the
Very
opening
interesting.
of...
I, I think I
Go
found their
ahead.
website. Have you seen their website by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me if this is it. Oh,
Hold on. I got to make it bigger.
and I can't understand the language that's on there. But one thing that I found interesting, 55 years of successful business, and there we go.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
it isn't, the address does come back out of Bulgaria.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's black arm sales right there. And by the way, it's still in existence, and it's still linked to the Bulgarian government. They're still at it. I just find it interesting that they were selling weapons to Israel right around the same time that now they only became a company officially in 68, but in 67 was the USS Liberty. So you know what they were doing at that time. With the opening of the drug route from the Golden Crescent, it became the first outfit to offer morphine base as payments. The firm also used extensively by NATO and the CIA for weapons. In one typical Kintex deal, 459 rocket launchers, 100,000 missiles were shipped in May 1977 from the Black Sea port of Burgas to a Kintex freighter under a Cyprus color. The vessel was skippered by a Greek captain. The provenance of the munitions appeared to be a NATO Navy base and probably the customer going to Italy, or I'm sorry, Israel. So Dwayne Claridge, who served as the CIA station chief in Ankara at the time of these meetings, allegedly worked with the Grey Wolves and Kintex and became a key figure in the arms for drugs business. So go ahead and look up Claridge, Clarridge. Let me know when you have him up. He should have been aware of the activities taking place at the hotel, like where the guy got beat up. I mean, like killed. But he makes no mention of this in a book that he later writes called A Spy for All Seasons. After the new drug network was established, he became the station chief in where? Rome. Are you kidding me? So
here's his face on the screen.
Yeah. So he creates the deal in Turkey. And then his next assignment is in Italy, which the deal was made with the Italians in the whole networking. Do you notice anything else interesting about him?
Well, his preparatory school is called Petty, and I found that just humorous. I think there was a mention of the Iran Contra. I think I saw tied to him. Obviously, what you were telling us about right now with the stay behind units. Oh, Nicaraguan. The mining of Nicaraguans this guy's in there.
Exactly. See, and that's what I keep telling people. When you start looking at these CIA people, and then you compare them to the embassy people, like the ambassadors and the military advisor, the military attaché or whatever, they all have these same things in common. It's like an entity within an entity. Yeah. So if you look at his background, he kind of fits a kind I don't know what you'd call it, like the standard kind of thing. Brown University, Columbia University. He was a dentist. These aren't people that have to do this kind of crap. They have other lives. And so he's working with the counter guerrillas and which is one of the stay behinds and the gray wolves. And then he moves into Rome. Then he moves into Latin America when we start cooing the governments down there, like Nicaragua. And basically is part of the whole where they were trying to investigate the mining of their harbor. Claridge was also instrumental in organizing and recruiting Contra forces, which again were the bad guys in trying to take over the Nicaraguan government. He also was dealing with the people in Honduras and basically defended the overthrow of democratically elected governments, specifically the Allende government, where they install Pinochet, who kills, a couple 100,000 of their people. So this guy's a bad guy. He's involved in the Iran-Contra, obviously. And again, very bad guy. What's funny is he ends up in San Diego.
I saw that. Full side home. I'm just like, get these guys out of Southern California, please. Jeez.
But see, look at this. In 2015, he's a top advisor on the Ben Carson presidential campaign. This guy is a effing loser. He is a CIA operative who has done horrible, horrible things. What the hell is he doing on the Ben Carson team?
Well, I was looking to this other group. It says in his post CIA life, if there's really such a thing as post CIA life. And it says that he was a part of the Eclipse Group, which was a private intelligence agency ran by him. It ties information related to politics of Afghanistan and the AFPAC region. But then as you read through, it brings in the San Diego area of San Diego. It talks about Hamid Karazi with DNA samples. I mean, it's stuff that's crazy. It brings up the heroin addicts. It's talking about the Blue Mountain in Libya, which I'm pretty sure is another story. But then, of course, there's the name that we discussed, a few shows ago. But it brings up the Iran-Contra and Oliver North. And it's just the circle of people. It's just always the freaking same.
Correct. So that's Hamid Karzai. So he's saying in here that they sought to discredit Hamid Karzai, the Kandahar power broker who had long been on the CIA payroll and planned to set spies on his half-brother, the Afghan president Hamid Karzai, in hopes of collecting beard trimmings and other DNA sample that they might prove Mr. Claridge's suspicions that the Afghan leader was a heroin addict. Again, all he's trying to do is stir up shit, right? And then, like you said, you get down there and they also fed to conservative commentators, including Oliver North, who he worked with on the Iran-Contra. So these are the crap people that they're getting their information from, and they're all in bed with the whole
smokes. Did you read the last sentence?
Yeah.
A frequent guest of Glenn Beck. Like, holy
well, I think he's talking about Brad Thor. Brad Thor is the author of the thrillers, but he's saying he feeds him information.
Oh, gotcha. So I'm seeing the linkage for how he gets it. Okay.
He's saying that he fed Oliver North and Brad Thor information that they would then go on television and basically parrot his talking points.
So he was
and that again is the whole reason why you have to take everything that people tell you, even, I mean, I love Glenn Beck, but you got to take what he says with a grain of salt and do your own research. Because if he's relying on shitheads like this guy to be their information source, do you think he's going to feed them anything about the CIA and Gladio and all this other crap? Hell no. And he's in it knee deep.
As a matter of fact, I think, well, not only will he not do it, he'll use his rapport to shut down anybody that might go on there to share that information.
Better point. You're absolutely right. Much better point. All right. So we got just a little bit more. The operation at the start of this network that they now have set up between Turkey and Italy and Bulgaria with the arms. This operation at the start was ran with basically Milan being the hub of the entire thing. The heroin base was smuggled into Italy by ethnic Albanians via a Balkan route, which ran through Bulgaria, through Kosovo, and into Albania, Greece, and Yugoslavia. The route continued to Milan, where a couple of their gray wolf kind of people were set up in warehouses. The product was picked up at these locations and using trucks transported to the harbor, put on ships down to Sicily, where in Sicily it was trucked, the morphine was trucked into labs, and they had an entire operation with chemists that transitioned it into a heroin that was loaded on freighters into the United States. And keep in mind, the CIA set this entire thing up. The drugs into the United States could be gone tomorrow. All you have to do is close the CIA and lock every one of their asses up. The drug problem would go away tomorrow. Let's see. Almost overnight, this operation became a multi-billion-dollar drug enterprise, providing drugs to the American mafia to be able to then send out through their network. The arms that was used as payment included AK-47s for the Nicaraguan Contras, the American missiles for the Ayatollah Khomeini's regime in Iran. One of the most spectacular of this operation involved its sale of thermonuclear weapons to an Arab nation believed to be Saudi Arabia. This operation included Gluco Partel, described in the Italian press as being a missile expert who worked for the National Security Administration, and Eugene Bartholomew, a U.S. intelligence veteran who served the CIA at the Nugent Hand Bank in Australia. Now, remember what I said about Nugent Hand. Nugent Hand was basically a very similar to BCCI that we just went through, same kind of clientele. Nugent was a CIA operative, so was Hand. Nugent was found executed in his Mercedes car with William Colby's business card, the CIA director's card, on his seat. And may have been William Casey. It's Colby or Casey. I always get those two. Then Han, who also was involved in this scam, he runs out immediately out of Australia. And the last anybody tracked him down, he was in Idaho hiding. So for the CIA officials and former spooks like Ted Shackley, who had worked for private intelligence gathering agencies like Research Associate International, or the one we just pulled up from Claridge, Milan became a one-stop shopping and snooping center. They had arms capability deal people there. They had heroin dealing there. So it became a hot spot for a lot of the Turkish Gladio operators hanging out in Milan. So it was not unusual for these people to meet there and have available to Calvi, who ran the Banco Ambrosiano, Jelly, who ran the Masonic P2 Lodge, and Archbishop Marcinicus, who basically ran the Vatican Bank. They could all discuss all of the activities of these multiple shell companies that the Vatican had set up in Panama in order to funnel money to and use them in their laundering operations. And they said, I read an article where they said it was not unusual to see these officials running around with large suitcases full of cash.
Like the freaking movies, man.
It is. It's just like it. So in 1979, business was booming as the freighters were unloaded on the docks of Miami and New York with all of the heroin. Listen to this. The heroin was trucked to pizza parlors owned by the Gambino crime family in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. The parlors became the centers of heroin distribution throughout the eastern half of the country. The cash from the drug sales, deposited in amounts of less than $10,000, because of course at the time that was kind of the magic number, would flow to the CIA control banks like Continental Illinois, which is the bank that Marcinicus was using for the Archdiocese of Chicago, which was basically a mafia bank. Castle Bank and Trust, which is the bank that Paul Helliwell, who is a CIA operative, set up both in Miami and in the Bahamas, and the BCCI. They would deposit them on those banks, and then those banks would send the money to the Vatican Bank and a chain of other banks in Italy as part of the laundering of the, and then the Vatican would send them to these fake companies to pretend like that was actually their business money. But it got, go ahead.
I was gonna say, not to go off on another topic, but just because I know, because I already saw two comments populate on the chat, something, pizza parlors, and we've heard of Pizzagate. We've heard of Pizzagate. And all I'm saying is, when they already have a structure in place on how this works, everything you just articulated to us, all you're doing is you're exchanging what the commodity is. And I hate to make it sound like I'm talking about
kids. No, that's exactly what they're doing. Yeah. But see, it's more than that, actually, Alpha. The people that meet in there to do the drug deals in these pizza parlors would be the ones that you would want to compromise using pedophilia. So it's much more than just, exchanging commodities. It's much more than that, because you want to control these people. But this business got so big that they began using banks like Citibank, the Bank of New York, and the Bank of Boston as auxiliaries to the money laundering. And eventually it gets so big, they're using Deutsche Bank, HSBC, UBS, all of the big banks are caught up in this. In 1979, the flood of heroin from Afghanistan inundated the United States, capturing over 60% of the market. The New York City alone, the mob sold over 2 tons, which registered a dramatic increase in the purity. The heroin addiction in the States climbed back up to 450,000. Within a year, street sales increased by 22%, and the addiction rate increased to over 500,000. And so there is a little tie, and I think I'm going to close on this one, but there was a little tie to also the Albanian mafia. And I found this very interesting. I never thought about it, but I lived on the east coast of Italy in a very small town called San Vito, which was just south of Brindisi. And Brindisi is a port city. And they had boat people from Albania all the time coming over, like we did from, Haiti or Cuba or whatever. but they had these boat people that would come over and kind of beach along the San Vito, Brindisi coastline, and you would see them walking down the streets all the time, and they look very different. A lot of them had like blonde hair, so they didn't look like they were Italian at all. And of course, the security briefing on base was, don't ever stop, don't ever pick them up, blah, blah, blah. But evidently, there was a huge overlap between the Albanian mafia and the Italian mafia. And it said that with the drug network growing out of Bulgaria and Turkey and Italy, that the couriers of raw opium to Italy by truck using a Balkan route were members of the Albanian mafia who did not worry about committing random acts of violence. Within Italy, they began to perform much of the dirty work for the Camorra and the Nostragata, which is the drug network, the mafia family they just took down in 2019, along the coast of the Adriatic Sea, which is where I lived. So now I'm thinking about this, living there in the middle of all of this going on, because I lived there from 90 to 93, which was at the height of all of this. And you start thinking about all of the drug routes coming down to, and Brindisi was a port city, so it would definitely have been in that area. And then it goes on to say, eventually the Italian mafia no longer spoke of the Muslim Albanians as foreigners, but as close friends. Throughout the 80s and into the 90s, the Albanian thugs became the chief perpetrators of drug smuggling, counterfeiting, passport theft, forgery, trafficking in human body parts, sex slavery, abduction, and murder. The influence of the criminal group grew to such an extent that in 1985, Cadolda Mata, Italy's top prosecutor, said the Albanian mafia posed a threat not only to the people in Italy, but the entire Western civilization. How's that?
You were living there. It's like, geez.
I know.
It's, you have to look at everything that we've been told and just always Gladio glasses on. We always say that. Put on your Gladio glasses. And when you see it, and I forget which person you were quoting when you were telling us, but if they truly wanted to shut down any kind of trafficking at our borders, we are more than capable of doing it. People, we need to draft new legislation and need new technology. No, we don't. If we truly wanted to shut down any kind of trafficking, human, narcotics, weapons, we have the ability to do that. The only reason we could do it tomorrow. The only reason we don't is because they don't want to.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to. And now we're finding out why.
Correct.
And even when you were talking about what was going on with the savings and the loans and the way they manipulated that, and then obviously we saw the housing market and we saw that. I mean, shoot, FTX. I bet you look at where FTX is going into Ukraine. The digital currency there. It's probably just the new age way of them doing this same money laundering to do all these things. It's just as we modernize, so do they. It seems like they're ahead of us when it comes.
But here's what kills me for people like you, Alpha. You went out every day with a gun and risked your life. You were basically over in your driveway kicking an anthill. That anthill that you were kicking, full of fire ants, all had guns. This is not a network that simply deals drugs and weak people get hooked on drugs and kill themselves on drugs. There is second and third and fourth order effects that stem from this. There are cops murdered every day for kicking anthills. And why are you kicking an anthill when our effing government set the fucking thing up? That's the part that just drives me nuts, is they have created this network, and we have good, loyal Americans going out every day trying to save their fellow citizens when all you're doing is kicking anthills.
It is beyond unfair. I mean, it's criminal, but speaking of that, we're going to listen, you guys, I'm going to let Colonel get her final comments in, and then I'm going to bring up a fairly new sponsor. They've been around for about 2 weeks now that I want to make sure you guys are aware of. But speaking of kicking anthills, Colonel, you are kicking a freaking anthill. Every time I go on X, you're somewhere talking about this and educating people. Where you find the time, I have no idea. But somebody even said, "Oh, Colonel dropped a bomb on her Rumble channel today." And so for those, because we're getting new people every single week. So for those that are like, "Holy smokes, I want more of this. I've never heard of the Colonel before." Colonel, where are you putting in work? Where can people find you? And the links are down in the description for those that just are impatient like me.
So the Colonel's Corner on Rumble, the Colonel's Corner on Substack, and I'm at Colonel, spelled the word out, Colonel Towner on X, and I'm at Colonel Watkins on Truth Social. And yeah, I would encourage everybody, if you haven't seen it, to go to Rumble and watch the video I did this afternoon. I stumbled across a bombshell, and it was just, it's mind blowing. I actually found a document that talks about the Albert Einstein Institute, and they created a program on how to create a revolution. You have to have your Gladio glasses on when you read their document, or it's basically a transcript of a briefing that they did. They're basically telling you that they're creating a revolution to get rid of a tyrant, when in fact they're basically phase one of Gladio. These are the George Soros National Endowment. They're completely funded by DARPA in the Defense Department, by the way, Albert Einstein Institute. And they create a movement of generally young college-age kids to foment revolution in areas that they want to overthrow. And I use the example that in 2004, they were able to generate so much chaos in Ukraine that they got a third unconstitutional election that ended up allowing the guy that didn't actually win the real election, which was the number 2 election. So they have ranked choice voting. So they had a vote and no one got over 50%. The 2 top guys went to a second vote, and the pro-Russian non-NATO guy won that election. But this How to Foment a Revolution group went in from the Albert Einstein Institute and created so much chaos in the streets that they convinced everybody that they needed to have a third election. And in Ukraine's constitution, that's unconstitutional. There's no such thing. So instead of allowing the current president to take office, they basically forced a third election, and he lost that third election. And so they basically installed the wrong guy, kind of like what happened here. And then you go 10 more years in 2014, these people are back in there again. And in their own words in this briefing, and there's a freaking Army retired colonel that's part of this entire initiative, just drives me nuts. So anyway, in their own words, they said what we have all noticed. They put women and children and old people at the front of these movements. And what they don't tell anybody is like what happened, although 2004 was mostly peaceful, 2014, they did basically the same thing going into this square, and the government would not, and it's the same guy. The guy that got thrown out of office, they were trying to coup him again. So when they pushed all of these people into that town square, phase 2 had already been set up. So these guys are working phase 1, trying to get everybody to do it, quote unquote, peacefully. Non-violent is the word they use. But meanwhile, all the snipers are already pre-positioned on the buildings, and they all open fire because the government's not going to allow them to overthrow him again. And then, of course, he ends up having stepped down. It's another successful coup. He has to go seek asylum in Russia. And in their own words in this document, which I linked to on my Rumble channel, it just shows you. And at the end of it, they're so freaking stupid. They name all of the places they've been doing this shit. And it's everywhere.
For those that don't know, they were trying to push ranked choice voting in the United States. As a matter of fact, I think there's still people that
there are some. Alaska still does it. California does it. Yeah. California used ranked choice voting.
That is no bueno.
Yeah, it is absolutely a bad, bad thing.
Well,
it's Colonel, so much easier to cheat.
You know what we need to do? No, I take it back. Hypothetical. I was going to say we need to cheat back because that's the only way they'll investigate the cheat. But then they're only going to investigate part of the cheat. I was just like, cheat? No, that's wrong, you guys. That was just me being emotional. Just me being emotional right there. Legitimate votings in an illegitimate election is what I will say. Colonel, anything special you guys are working on for your channel, for X, that people can kind of start preparing for?
Well, what we're doing right now on X every day at noon, Monday through Friday, is we're taking preferably an hour. It does get a little, we're growing. The audience is getting bigger and it's getting more diverse. Like today, we had Italians in the audience, we had Cubans in the audience, and we had Swedes in the audience. And basically, as you well know, we went through Central America, South America, and some of the Caribbean, just to kind of show the similarities of how these operations occur in the overthrow of these governments. So we moved on Monday to Europe, and we did Sweden, and now we're doing Italy. And Italy, obviously, as we just found out, has so much because they're the only one that did a full investigation into their Operation Gladio infrastructure. So we are going to take as many days as necessary to go through all of Italy and what they exposed, because it's so relevant to many of the other operations that we're going to go on and move on to in Europe. So that's kind of what we do every day at noon for about an hour. And then we open it up for questions and comments at the end of that. That's been very exciting. I love the feedback. I love the interaction. And obviously the confirmation that what we are reporting and displaying from people on the ground in these countries is absolutely correct.
That is, the Colonel's Corner is worldwide, y'all. Operation Gladio, the Gladio glasses. You are a patriot, Colonel. With that, you guys, I'm going to let the Colonel go. We're going to break to a quick commercial. And when we come back, I'm going to tell you about a new sponsor. Any final words you want to say to the audience, Colonel?
Just thank you for being here. I love doing this live, Alpha.
I do too, especially because, well, Cujo could have told me like 40 minutes earlier about my mic. Like, come on. Cujo's always there. It's like, Cujo, it took always you 40 minutes. Yeah. You know, and he has my phone number. You could have texted me, man. You could have texted me. That's okay. With that, you guys, we will be right back after this commercial. And Colonel, feel free to stick around. But I do know it's late on the East Coast for you. So if you got to jettison, no worries. So we'll be back in 60 seconds.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium My Pillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over. Your entire order ships absolutely free.
Absolutely free. I might be bringing the Colonel back up to do something where I kind of fumbled the ball a little bit. But before I do, let me bring on this new sponsor for you guys right here. I'll talk about Pet Club 24/7, Alpha Warrior Show.petclub247.com. Link is down in the description. When you go here, obviously there's phenomenal testimonies about the products that they have for your fur babies that are here. And I love fur babies. Come on, I was a canine handler, you guys. But more important than the fur babies is still, to me, humans. So when you guys go to their website, links down in the description, and you click on shop, that's going to bring you to, at the top, dogs, cats, horses, humans. So we click on humans while we still are. And then there's these three, I mean, there's all kinds of products, but in particular, the three at the top that I want to talk about. The first one that kind of went super popular with them, and I didn't even realize that this was the viral stuff my brother was telling me about, is this Enforce, I'm going to call it CV, Coryllius versicolor, but we're just talking about great things. You can click on the video, you can learn about it. But what I want to bring you guys' attention to answer some of the questions that I've been getting in DMs and emails is when you, I mean, obviously you can see the benefits and the ingredients, but in every single one of these products, they have this little menu, and it'll tell you like Enforce, this one particular, immune support, immune modulation support. And then you see the plus that has reishi, what it covers, the one that has the Maitake, and then the lion's mane. So to answer your guys' questions on, you know, which one for which, this one right here gives you great direction on this stuff. I have mine. I've been doing 2 a day. Absolutely freaking love it. The other thing too is in this particular one, this green one, this is the only one that comes in a capsule, because I was asking, well, is it safe for kids? Absolutely it is. But this is the one that they recommended for the kids, because then you could break up the capsule and put it like in their applesauce or, you know, their juice or something like that. But the other ones, because like this one right here is the one that I have, the plus that has reishi. This is just like a regular supplement tablet that you take. So, and I ain't crushing that because that would just be gross. So let me bring this off the screen and bring the Colonel back on the screen. Welcome back, Colonel. Great to have you. And I am going to pull up our old show. So just bear with me 1 second, and then we will go through some of those comments. And just a second. Let's see. A lot of people watching on Rumble. X giving them a challenge. Both channels right now over 1,000. So Rumble and X are fighting for to be the primary. So Operation Gladio 15. Let me make sure it's muted, and I'll pause it, and let me bring this up on the screen so we can see it. Share here, there. Now, don't have a chance to go through all the comments, you guys, so forgive me on this one. We'll go by newest. 36 comments. We're going to fly by. I'll go to the bottom with some of the oldest ones. So here we go. I'm going to try to edit as we go since we are live here. See if one of you guys don't sucker me into reading something. This one comes from Catherine the Great. Both Alpha Warrior and the Colonel are amazing in these videos. Thank you so much for this information. It is incredible. These are some short ones, so I'll fly through them. Cheryl 45 MAGA, absolutely amazing information. Joyce Hawley, the Colonel made the X-22 report tonight. What? Did you know that?
I did. Yes. Somebody sent me the clip.
No way. You got to share that with me. Holy smokes, Colonel.
Yeah.
That is, hold on. I'm going to pin that one so everybody knows. And wow, that's, you deserve it. You deserve it. You know, I'm going to take a moment.
It wasn't even about Gladio, but it was hilarious. I'll send it to you.
Oh, I'm still pumped that you made it. So, but just wait till you're on Joe Rogan. I'm going to be, remember us little fish, Colonel. Remember us little fish. Because I mean, if you had Terrence Howard, wait till he gets a load of what you got. Let's see. Continue on. Let's scroll up.
So we had a conversation yesterday, I think it was, about if Tucker can have on Felix Rodriguez, which is a CIA Operation Gladio assassin, he could at least have me on to let him know that his security sucks.
Like you have no idea how close you were to getting taken out, Tucker. Like,
Right?
Who knows? Dust Bunny 007. Wow. I keep digging, finding verifications everywhere. Hard to dispute the connections. I agree with you. Kay Guggen. Hi, Alpha. I just finished listening to you on Jenny's podcast. I listen to Dan all the time and your Synchronicity podcast. I will be praying for you and your family about June 6th. Please have Dan reach out to all of us if you are unable to. I, for one, would be proud to help you and your family. Kay Guggen, appreciate that very much. Thank you. God bless. Let's scroll up here. We have Sue's Chef. I was always taught in school that the Vichy government was a puppet government of the German Nazis. You got anything to say to that?
Yep. No, that's true.
All right. Let's see. TPH14 Alpha. Also, I cannot find your playlist tab, so I can share a series. Found it once, but now I cannot. I will show that once we get through these comments where you guys go to find it. Let's see. Oh Jabber Oh Joe, but the powers that be corrupt. 95% of the things in our world that are bad or undesirable can be traced back to John D. Rockefeller. D for devil. I like that. I have suspicions that if they had the type of mass technology back in those days, similar to what is used today by the intelligence agencies, I don't doubt that at all. It's definitely probably way more sophisticated. Think Mission Impossible movies. It wouldn't surprise me to find out that they were just creating alternate identities to be the head of all those corporations to avoid the whole monopoly situation. It would have been fairly easy with being before birth certificates, social security numbers, etc. Names like Morgan Shield are suspicious. Having components of their cohorts, JP Morgan and the Rothschild, the Red Shield. Wow, Jabberjaw's doing their research. You better slide in. You're getting them DMs, Jabberjaw. Let's see. We'll go up here and let's see. Matter in Hell. I like that name. Freaking awesome show, guys. Thanks for everything you do. Catherine the Great, another one. Both Alpha and the Colonel are amazing in these videos. Thank you too much for this information. Is incredible. I hear you. And then we have the pinned one for the Colonel. So for those of you guys that want to know the playlist, let me just go here. Go to homepage. So when you're on the homepage right here, you'll see all, you'll see videos, you'll see live, and then you'll see playlists. And these playlists will have the Operation Gladio. I'll add last week's and this week's to there. And then obviously you see some other ones. I got the Devolution series here if you guys want to see the interviews that I've done with John. And then obviously you'll see the 9/11 videos that I've done. Two great different shows, but that's where the playlists are. I will pull that off the screen. And yes, I'm going to read all the comments, you guys. It's just the Colonel's on the East Coast, so I need to make sure that I'm not keeping her up too late.
I get my sleep. Yeah.
But with that, you guys, I got nothing else. Colonel, how about you?
I'm good. God bless you, Alpha, and you'll be in my prayers tomorrow.
I appreciate that. Oh, I will say something to that. So there's no chance of Alpha getting arrested tomorrow or put in jail. Tomorrow is when the judge says either you take a plea or we're announcing trial. I'm going to try to push back because of some discovery issues we still haven't got. But at the end of the day, if we got to push the trial date, we'll push the trial date. And then that's when we move into the 2-minute warning of the game, you guys. So with that, definitely appreciate you guys. Keep me in your prayers. But something even more important than just praying for me is part of saving this country and saving this world is you, the listener, getting this information, understanding this information, and then sharing it. You guys are the digital soldiers. This is the Alpha Warrior Show. First in, last out. I'll catch you guys next time. God bless. I can't say goodbye just yet. You guys, why? Because once again, Call Sign Cujo is yelling at me in the live chat saying, Alpha, the rants, the rants. So I'll do two cool things. One, because this is how you guys support me and support this show. So I will bring up the rants that we have to show on the screen, and I'll read them. I'll start with the first one. So first on deck, we have, this comes from American Patriot 0912, says, yay, love this show and the information never gets old. Thanks to Alpha and the Colonel for everything that you do for us. Love y'all. Oh yeah, Alpha, Crayola or Rosar? Crayola, man, Crayola all the time. Not even the contest there. Haha, love you, brother. Appreciate it. $10 Rumble rant. Next on deck, he's always here. Breadmaker 62 with a $200 Rumble rant. Thank you. Thank you both for all that you do for us. As for tomorrow, praying for you, Alpha. Hugs, brother. Much appreciated. And then our third one coming in from Boozer20, $11 Rumble rant. I'm enjoying the show as always. Good luck tomorrow with everything. Remember, fuck them in the neck because it hurts. He put asterisks, but you know what? Feeling spicy, so I said it for him. And then our last Rumble rant, Rosalinda, $10. I got my Gladio glasses. Again, you guys, thank you guys for those Rumble rants. That keeps this show going, and I won't quit. So with that, I'll catch you guys next time. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Semper Fi.